Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi. So on doubtful matters, things are not clear. It's not clear on it being halal, on it being haram. The evidence clashes. The means, the meanings are not clear, or the causes of it being halal or haram are not clear. Yeah. And when they are explained, some there's difference of opinion in that. Yeah. So the best thing is to abstain from all these until if something is doubtful, is a grey area. Yeah. And for grey areas, it's better to leave and go to where there is no doubt. That's the clear-cut thing. Rather than going into too much detail on this, it's where there is difference of opinion, go to where there is no difference of opinion. And the classic case is, what we were talking about before on tobacco. Yeah, you've got opinions that say it's makruh. There's opinions that say it's haram. Yeah, and then what you're left with is that the underlying reason why they're saying it's makruh, because there's no primary evidence. There's no primary evidence. The people that are saying it's haram, they're saying it from scholarly opinion. So both are valid opinions, but what are you going to do? Leave it. Go on.
Is this what gets called wara'? Is that some?
No. Wara' is wara' would be where there's primary evidence, and then there's difference of opinion, not scholarly opinion.
Okay.
Do you understand?
So there's primary evidence, and the interpretation of that.
On the primary evidence,
yeah.
There's two opinions.
Right.
And what the Sufis do,
yeah.
The Sufis have a beautiful usul. Yeah. You reminded me. The Sufis will tell you on music as well. They have. Where when scholars can't agree, they will wait till they agree.
Wait till the scholars agree.
Yeah, they won't do it. We ain't going to get involved. They're the master, they're the experts. They can't sort it out. So till they sort it out, we won't do it. Yeah. The music one, Imam Junaid has a beautiful principle. He says. Again, this is the sama of the Sufiya without any alat, without any musical instruments, because Imam Junaid's way doesn't have musical instruments, just the voice. Makan, zaman, ikhwan. Makan, zaman, ikhwan. So if the place is right, the time is right, and the people are right, they'll have sama. Otherwise they won't. If you want to really read up on music, there's his name's al-Wahid al-Maqdisi. He's Hafiz of Hadith. He has what's it called? He's before Imam Ghazali. I think it's Fasl fit Tasawwuf. But if you want, I'll pass the name of the book to Sidi Abdurrahim, and he'll pass it on. I can't remember the name of the book, but the book is in print. You can even get a PDF online. But what he does is he goes through all the evidences of hadith, because he's a hafiz of hadith. He goes through all the hadith and he finds fault. But from a fiqh point of view, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi's in Ahkam al-Quran is the best discussion. And then after him is Shawkani, Nail al-Atar. And he's actually got a specific risala on music as well, which is in print. Okay. So we move on to the next point section, which was stopping at matters where you are ignorant of the ruling. You're ignorant of the ruling until you have knowledge, meaning you have overwhelming doubt. Your overwhelming doubt, not that you have certainty, your overwhelming doubt has been removed. Yeah? So you know what the hukm of God is in that. And that is an obligation, that you don't move until you know the hukm. So you attain this by looking into the evidences in the books of knowledge, if you have the ability to do this. Otherwise, you ask someone who has knowledge. So only then do you do that action, or you leave it. And the evidence that Sidi Miara has brought forward for this, that it's an obligation, is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that it's not halal for any individual that he proceed on a matter until he has knowledge of the hukm of Allah in it. Yeah? That's the wording of the hadith. He says this is different from leaving the mutashabihat, because in the mutashabihat there's ikhtilaf of the ulama, because there's a clash of the evidences for halal or haram. But here you're stopping until you know the hukm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in it. Yes.
So al-wara' is not in mutashabihat. Al-wara' is
wara is your piety. Wara will always be in mutashabihat and not in mutashabihat. Wara can be in anything. Yeah. It's like I don't know where this. It's like I'll give you an example. I only know of one country in the world where you can go and eat their meat and know it's 100% halal. Only one country in the world. Brunei. One country. Why? Because you see, everything connected with the animal is ensured that it's halal. Not all, in our scenario here, all we look at is, has the slaughter been done? Yeah. While the Brunei standard is it tayyib? Was the imam practicing? Was the knife sharp enough? How many times did it the feed, the ground, the shelter? the wages, are they all halal? Because these are matters of halal and haram. But will you say now that is wara? No. That's how things should be.
Is there any argument for preferring kosher meat to so-called halal on the basis that they're so much more careful?
Yes and no. You know, Imam Juzay al-Kalbi, they are categorical, and he's a student of Ibn Rushd, Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi, and he said, when you know there's halal alternative and you choose, no, they don't permit you. They don't permit you. But again, if we could get a group of scholars to come together and give an opinion, then we would have a precedent. But then they would have to dish the whole halal system in this country. They would. Because you see, for you to give kosher as an alternative, you've got to prove that the halal is not halal. Yeah? So anyway. So here, you know, what we're talking about is stopping until you are fully aware of the hukum in this masla. Yeah? Now, what we're talking about is, you know, not, you know, to know every ramification of that hukum, but how the hukum affects you. Yeah? For instance, you know, you want to buy and sell. Yeah? So you need to know the ahkam of buying and selling, what you are selling. Not, you know, every aspect of buying and selling. Does that make sense? Yeah? And the same, you know, with hiring and stuff and people and or, you know, giving property out on rent and, you know, whatever, all each ahkam that relates to you. Yeah? So we're not, you know, looking at every aspect of the masla, but, you know, jumlatan, you know, in general, how they apply to you, and specifically those matters that will affect you. Because, you know, going into every aspect of that ahkam, that's, you know, the remit of the jurists. That's not your remit. And it's a fard al-kifaya, not, you know, a fard al-ain.
Sorry, what's the fard?
You know, fard al-kifaya is that, you know, that a jamaat has jurists who know every aspect of knowledge.
So you stop until you know the ruling.
Yeah.
Your obligation is to know as much as you need to know.
Need to know
in your particular situation.
In your particular situation, but it's not an individual obligation to know all the ramifications of that, because that's the remit of the jurists, which is a communal obligation. The community should have jurists who know.
I see.
Yeah? Okay. Are we? Do we understand that point? Then we move on to, you know, the final point. Are we okay on that? Okay. So we move on to, as to, you know, purifying the heart from its illnesses of pride, jealousy, vanity, and others. This again is an obligation. Yeah? It's an obligation. And the rest of, you know, the illnesses of the heart, pride, jealousy, rebellion, usurping, the rights of other than Allah, deceiving, miserliness, making up stuff, false pride, getting involved in things that don't concern you. That's what you were about hadith. Yeah? Coveting, desire, fear of poverty. It's difficult to accept that as a illness of the heart, isn't it? Fear of poverty. People won't have children because but it's a fear. It's a you're not satisfied with God, so it's an illness. Resentment, wantonness, esteeming the wealthy because of their wealth, and making fun of the poor because of their poverty. Boasting and pride, and seeking the dunya. And praising making yourself more than you are just to show off for creation. Hypocrisy.
But is it okay to show off for Allah? So, example, I want to go and buy a nice outfit, but my intention, my sincere intention is to show off that Allah has given me bounty, and I want to show off to Allah that He's given me this.
Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu would say that, if God has given you, you should show it. But again, what that means is that, don't be miserly. If God has, given you, then, show it. It's like our Shaykh radiallahu anhu, he would, and people smiled when he said that. He says, what you've got to do is wear the best. Yeah? Get the best clothes, get the best car, best house, what you can afford. Yeah? It's like, don't look like a down and out, but do lot of ibadah. Remember Allah much. And it reminded me of what Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam said, that the people of knowledge, they've got to be successful, because otherwise people will not follow you in that path. And it's the same what Sidi Hamza was saying, was that what you find is that he wouldn't go for people wearing thobes and long turbans and big imamas. He says that's not our time. An English faqir is moved to Malaysia now. He went from the UK and he had a thobe on and he put a turban on, and he looked at him and said, where you come from? I said, England. So is that what they wear there? It's that you've got to be if God has given you, then within reason, don't be miserly. But when you beautify yourself for creation, rather than generally wearing beautiful clothes, because then you're not doing it to show off. Loving praise for what you have done or are doing, and occupying yourself in the faults of others, and forgetting, the bounty that God has bestowed on you. And doing things for other than Allah. Now Sidi Mayara says all of this is haram. And he says there's a unanimity on it being prohibited. So now, Sidi Mayara, he says now when there is agreement on all of these being prohibited, he says then it's an obligation to purify the heart from these. So when we're all agreeing, all these traits are prohibited, then it's an obligation to get rid of these. Now, they disagree. Is it an obligation to know, the limits of them, the causes of them, the cures of them? And is this an individual obligation? And he says this is what Imam Ghazali said. He says first is an obligation, rather that when God gives man a sound heart from these ailments which are what's it called, haram, and it's necessary that he know the cures for them. And this is what he said and others have said. If I stop here and share with you something that there's a very famous imam from modern day Seville, Spain. His name's Abdul Haq Ishbili. He's a Hafiz of Hadith. His books on Hadith are in print, and he has small work on Tahajjud. And when he starts talking about wudu, he comments that when Sayyidina Imam Zainul Abidin would do wudu, his colour would fade pale. He would go pale. And someone asked him, Sidi, why does this happen? He says, just the thought of in whose presence I'm going to go to. And Imam Abdul Haq Ishbili comments that if we can't go into the presence of God without physical tahara, how is it possible that our heart can be full of filth and we can still go in His presence? So is it a fardul ayn of not? If you keep in mind what I was telling you earlier on this morning, that it is purification is part and parcel of the mission of the Prophet, and tazkiyah is part and parcel of the deen. I don't think we're that unintelligent to work that one out. Yeah?
Who was the person whose limbs went? Oh no, his face would have gone pale.
Yes.
Was that
Imam Zainul Abidin. Imam Malik, his Imam Malik only went on Hajj once in his lifetime he only did one Fard Hajj. He went on Hajj with Imam Zainul Abidin. Imam Zainul Abidin's grandson. Imam Jafar al-Sadiq. And
teacher.
huh?
He's his teacher.
He's his teacher, yeah. But he's Imam Zainul Abidin's grandson. And when they got to Shajara, which is Dhul Halifa, just outside of Medina, where you put your ihram on and begin the talbiyah. So
on the way out.
yeah, the way out of Medina towards Mecca is where the place used to be called Shajara then, now is called Dhul Halifa. It's the whole mosque complex there. So Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, said, because with the school of Medina, you only, when you start journeying towards Mecca, you start the talbiyah. So he, did the ghusl 2 rakat, put the ihram on, and then he got on his mount, and he made the intention for Hajj, and then said the talbiyah. He went pale, and Imam Malik said, I didn't expect this from you. And he said, my grandfather fainted and fell on his face when he said that. And he asked him, why did you go pale? He said that, because you say labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, oh God, I'm at your service. He says, I fear the reply coming back, no, you're not at my service. He just fainted, fell off the horse. Imam Zain al-Abidin, and hit his cheek. Okay. So Imam Sidi Mayara says, pride is attached, is derived from looking. Pride. So your pride that other people look at you. Hearing good thing about you is from sama, from listening. And riya, he says is also that you seek a place in the heart of people. So you want a good characteristic with the people, and he says this is haram, because this obligates maqt with Allah. And he says this is shirk. You want a place with God, because you're placing yourself as an entity.
Sorry, it's obligate what?
Maqt. What's maqt?
With ta at the end.
Ta. I'll get it. So he obligates, hatred for God, because you are putting, the love of yourself in people's heart. And now Sidi Mayara says that, but however, it is, minor shirk, like it is, in the Risala of Ibn Zayd al-Qayrawani. So the sign of it is laziness. And little from, action in collective action. But you want, a lot of work between the people. So what you want is that, a lot of work when there is praise for it. And little when there is, fault. When people will see you doing good, you'll do a lot. As to jealousy, Imam Ghazali says that there's no jealousy except in, bounty or favor. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, favors your brother with a bounty, and He says, and for you in it, there's two states. One is that, you want that removed from your brother. Yeah? This is what's called jealousy. This is hasad. Because the limit of jealousy is when there is, abhorrence for that. You dislike that for your brother, and you want him not to have that.
The limit, the utmost limit, the worst of it.
Worst of it. The other state is that, you don't want it removed. This is the good, because jealousy has, the first description is, something that's abhorrent. This is that you don't want it removed, and you don't abhor it, abhor the existence of it, or, the continuation of it. But, however, you desire for yourself the similar of it. Now, this is called ghibta. Now, Sidi Mayara says hasad is prohibited. Now, the next bit, I personally don't agree with it, but again, it's in the text. Jealousy is prohibited except, when the bounty has hit, a sinner or a disbeliever. And he is supported by it. And what is not, halal for him. There's no harm in abhorring it and, you loving it that it's removed. Because, your abhorrence for it, because it is, a tool for corruption. However, that bounty is. Again, I personally don't agree with it, but that's what our scholars held 400 years ago. Because, someone winning the lottery or, someone doing really well, does it matter if he's Muslim or non-Muslim? Yeah? Except, when they are promoting haram, this is what. But again, it's not haram for them, it's haram for us. Yeah? As to, ghibta, it says, this is not haram. He says, but it's an obligation or a recommendation all permitted. Because you know, when someone else does good, does well, and you want to do well like that, but you're not jealous of him, you don't want his him doing well removed, then that's okay. As to ujub, you know, when you esteem that bounty, and you know, when you forget who's given you that, he says that's, you know, something that is censored in the Book of Allah and in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says the difference between it and kibr, you know, pride, is that with kibr you're actually calling, you know, to yourself. But as to, you know, vanity, you're not, you know, calling to it.
Not calling people's attention to it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when you're proud, you invite, oh, look what I've become. Well, when you're vain, I think in English you would, wouldn't you? Someone who's vain is they want people to.
Yeah. Is it self-satisfaction? What is it?
How should the Maliki translated it?
For ujub?
Yeah.
It's conceit,
Okay.
which is the glorification of one's good actions while forgetting they are a gift from Allah.
Mm. To sum up, what Sidi Mayara says, that, you know, the fourth Ruba Thalith, you know, the third quarter from the Ihya Ulumuddin covers these, what he's talking about.
Sidi Murad refers to that.
To the Ihya Ulumuddin. It's in print in English, in Arabic, not in English. There's a Muqaddimah wa Ghalasiyya with the commentary of Sidi Zarouk. What he does, he actually Sharh Muqaddimah wa Ghalasiyya. Sharh Muqaddimah wa Ghalasiyya. Waghlasiya.
Is that a name?
Yeah, it's an introduction, muqaddimah. It's, you know, what Sidi Ibn Ashir is now. Before it was written, Muqaddimah wa Ghalasiyya was the standard. And what the Muqaddimah wa Ghalasiyya does is, you know, it's the end. He goes through, you know, all of these, he defines them, what they are, and talks about them a bit more. But, you know, all of these, I would sum up, you know, this, what, you know, Sidi Hamza's Sheikh, Sidi Hajj al-Abbas radhiyallahu anhu, used to say was that, you know, you can do two things. You can do up the facade of the house, or you can, now from outward the house looks beautiful, or you can do up the house itself. But when you do up the house, it doesn't matter if the facade looks good or not. because the house is, strong. So he said that, the heart, if you sort that out, the outer will automatically fall in place. But if, however much you work at the physical, the spiritual will never be sorted. But if you concentrate on the batin, the outer limbs will automatically fall in place. So their method was they concentrated on the heart. And if that is sound, you know what the Prophet ﷺ, he backed up with the same hadith, that if the heart is whole, the whole body is whole. But if you concentrate on all the illnesses and not concentrate on the root, then it's what Sidi Hamza used to say, that there are doctors who are ill themselves but can cure others. But there are doctors who are can't cure themselves and can't cure anyone. And there are doctors who can cure themselves and can cure others, but their medicine isn't right. It's that the medicine is either just enough to get the ball rolling, but not fully. And the way of the Prophet ﷺ was that to how long was for 10 years, and for 10 years there was no ahkam shar'i.
For 10 years. It was just tawheed.
There was no ahkam shar'i. Because the salat is 3 years before the hijrah. So the mission of the Prophet ﷺ is 23 years. So 10 years there is no ahkam shar'i. But there is iman. There is Quran. And this is, the method, the sheikhs of the tariqah of our sheikh, they concentrated on that. We can't go back to that, but you do what you have to do, but the emphasis was on, sorting out your inner. And once that's sorted, then everything will fall in place. And to quote him, to the Hajj al-Abbas, he said, the outer limbs will fall in place even if they don't want to. They will fall in place. Why? Because you see, the inner is sorted. So these ujub, pride, kibr, those are good and fine, but it's not enough just to know what they do. You can either concentrate on those, the different aspects of them, or you go to the very root cause.
Why is it the last chapter in the book? Because I'd say the reason I'm asking is you just had somebody take their shahada and pick bread.
Why is this the last chapter?
Yeah. And what really the practical question is, what should be our advice to somebody who takes their shahada? I guess different strokes for different folks. But really, as I understand it, they should go and take a shower. You should give them a new set of clothes, say, well done, now you pray behind me, and off we go. But that's...
I'll tell you what, our Sheikh's grandson told them. Keep them away from Muslims.
Yeah.
Seriously. So when someone someone new to the deen, company, right company, keep them away from wrong company. And the thing is that, the sunnah of the Prophet was he never told anyone first to pray, or to fast, or to give zakat. Unless, those blessed individuals who... There's one Sahabi who never did anything. And he died on jihad. He never prayed one prayer, never fasted one fast, never did Hajj, never gave zakat, got on a horse, went into battle, straight. He was a Jew as well. He became a Muslim. But the Prophet advised to Mu'adh bin Jabal, and that's the advice, and that's the method of the Sheikhs of our tariqah. Allah, tell them about God, tell them about the Prophet. If that settles, then tell them about prayer. If they're okay with that, then fasting, and then zakat. Mu'adh bin Jabal, read the... I need to go do wuzu. Then we'll go to verse 301. Read the advice of Mu'adh bin Jabal, the advice of the Prophet to him, Mu'adh bin Jabal. Because he was sent as a teacher to Yemen. And the Prophet told him, you're going to come across people of the book. The Jews, there were Jews and Christians there. He says, tell them about God. Once they accept, then tell them about me. When they accept, then pray. And so on and so forth. And that advice does not change. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. 301. وَعَلَمْ بِأَنَّ أَصْلَ ذِي آفَاتٍ حب الرياسة وطرح العاتي ورأس الخطايا حب العاجلة ليس الدواء إلا في الاضطرار له. It's beautiful. Bismillah.
Know that the root of all blight is love of leadership, rank, praise, honor, and ease in this world, and rejection of the life to come.
There you go. You see, here we hit the thing on the head. The nail on the head. The root of all these illnesses, what we've covered. Meaning, the ruin of the heart, the things that befall the heart and its illnesses. Is, that insan, that man seeks to purify his heart from, like, pride and jealousy, and other than these two, what have preceded, is that it loves leadership in the dunya. And it is said it is the last thing that's removed from the heart of Siddiqeen. And, forgetting the akhirah. God protect us from this. What's evidenced for this is the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلِّ خَطَايَا. That, love of leadership. Love of dunya is the root of khataya, head of kulli khataya. Imam Shawkani has a whole risala on this hadith. He traced all, the asanid of it. The ayah from the Quran, Man kana yuridu al-ajila. Now, here, when he's mentioned, the root of what befalls us, the love of the dunya, and he's evidenced it with this hadith. And that, God save us from these until, God moves us and overwhelm our ego and oppose it and attach it to obedience. So you single it out and it from leaning to sin. For that's its character. The character of the soul is that it leans to sin. Inna nafsa al-amara bisu. We always forget the ayah, the word that comes right after it. Illa ma rahima rabbi. Yeah? Inna nafsa li amaratu bisu illa ma rahima rabbi. It's from Surah Yusuf, ayat 53. That the ego commands to evil, except whom God has mercy on. Now, there's something that Sidi Miara has said in this passage commentary, which is really, really interesting. That the love of leadership. Everyone that you can think of, from the highest to the lowest, every one of us wants some kind of leadership. Some kind of leadership, in one way or the other. We want to, overpower others. We want position. We want to be known. Well, the path is the total opposite. I don't think any of you, maybe you will. Do you remember that American series called Kung Fu? Yeah? He's in the States and he's always thinking of the time he spent in the temple with his master. So one of them is where his master taught him how to, he'd lay out a roll of paper and he had to walk without leaving any footprints. No? Anybody remember?
I don't remember that episode, but I remember
okay. Well, if you get time, watch it. Because you see, the whole thing is not to leave any trace. Well, leadership is the opposite. You want leadership. It's like, in every aspect of life, there's competition. We as human beings, our character is we can't get away from competition. And Shaykh al-Akbar, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, he said that, a stone makes no sound when sinking. Does that make sense? No? Get a big boulder and throw it in the sea. See what happens to it. You'll hear the initial splash, but after that there's no sound. Yeah? And what he's hinting at is that, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he says that the murid should be in the hands of his Shaykh like the dead body in the hands of the washer. He turns it whichever way he wants to. And this leads us on to the next section, because without a guide, none of this becomes possible. Because he's still alive, so I won't tell you his name. He went to his sheikh, and the sheikh said, "You want leadership now?" And you know the worst thing, that's the worst conversation that can ever happen between the sheikh and the murid. But the sheikh turns around and says, "You want leadership now?" So he's wanted, the earth to open and gobble him up. He went home and even thought of, suicide. What the hell? And he took him a month to pick up courage to go back to the sheikh and said, "Sheikh said, what have you been?" So you said this to him. He says, "No, I didn't." So sometimes, we're used as means of instruction. Maybe you got sorted. Because this thing that, is the last thing. Leadership is the last thing to go. So, one of the du'as that we read in our collective gatherings, it's Qasida Munfarija. It's by Imam Nahwi. He was a student of Imam Mazari. And he says that, aim to, even to get rid of the traces. The things that we're talking about. When you remove something, traces still remain. And this, leadership, even if it is rooted, the traces of it will remain.
Just reminded me of something. One of our teachers, Habib Omar, one of the students that spent many years with him, came back to the UK and then went back to the Yemen. He saw Habib Omar and he was happy to see him.
Yeah.
And he went out to him, big smile on his face, Habib Omar, and Habib Omar just totally blanked him. And he was distraught, he was distressed.
Yeah.
And one of the other Murid came around and said to him, do you know what that was? That was your lesson on on removing the disease of wanting to be known.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the thing is that the adage a friend of mine shared with me was that because students always want to be always around the teacher. So he said, only the patient in intensive care gets 24-hour attention. So someone really sick gets 24-hour attention. Okay. Verses 303 to 312.
He must keep the company of a sheikh who has knowledge of the ways and who will protect him on his path from dangers. He reminds him of Allah when he sees him, and he brings the slave to his Lord. He takes the self to account for every breath and weighs his thoughts and feelings in the balance. He must preserve the fard obligation, which is his capital, just as the nafilah acts are his profit, by which he befriends Allah. He increases dhikr by the means of the purity of his core, and help in all of this by means of his Lord. He struggles against the self for the sake of the Lord of the worlds, and he will be adorned with the stations of certainty. Fear, hope, gratitude, patience, tawbah, doing without, reliance, contentment and love. He is true towards the one who witnesses in his transactions, and is content with what his Lord has decreed for him. Then he will become agnostic of Allah, free, and other than Allah will leave his heart. Then Allah will love him, will choose him for the presence of the sacred, and elect him over others. Although these lines do not encompass the full spectrum of this science, there is enough in what I have mentioned.
That's it. 3 or 12.
Okay.
3 or 12. Okay. So, Sidi Mehra says that, as to, the company of the Sheikh who knows the way. Do you remember this morning I was talking about methodology? Yeah? So, by the Sheikh, we're talking about a teacher, not someone, my dad was a Sheikh and I'm a Sheikh. Someone who knows the method. Yeah? And has practiced it and has reached the end of it. Not someone who's en route. Yeah? He's learning and he's dragging others along. No. Has to be someone, someone who has already, reached it. And because it says, الشيخ العارف بالمسالك, the Shaykh who knows the way. Now, the only way you're going to know the way is if you've traversed it, you've travelled the way. Yeah? And now, this way is the way to connect to God. So he protects his companion from destruction. Yeah? So when you're a guide, your job is to make sure the people that you're guiding don't get lost. Yeah? Don't get lost. When you see him, Allah is remembered. And He connects you to your Lord. I want to share some words with you. Of Sidi Hamza on this. He said something quite beautiful. He said, when you find one who has spent his life with the light of God in his heart, yeah, ripened his soul with the love of his emissary, and permitted you to sip from a love that sets ablaze your heart, energizes your limbs for acts of good, and adhering to taqwa, and striving in the stages of certainty. So that's the person you're looking for. It's someone who, has the light of God inside and the love of Rasulullah. And this, that when you see him, God is remembered and he connects you to God. This can only happen if he himself is there. Otherwise, it's just, Sidi Ahmad Zaruq, he says there are three types of Shaykh. Shaykh al-Surah, Shaykh al-Tariqa, and Shaykh al-Haqiqa. He says there's someone who looks like a Shaykh. Yeah? There's someone, my dad was a Shaykh and I'm a Shaykh. Yeah? And then there's the real Shaykh. He says forget about the two. Stick to the third. And Sidi Hamza, he says, however, when you attach to one who has darkened his heart by the sleep of heedlessness, that is for you like a breath from the bellows. it will either burn your clothes or support for him in states of solidity and acts of disgrace. He said something which, in English doesn't make sense. He says, character from character steals. Does that?
I think makes sense.
Okay.
He says, if I sit with you, I will
yes,
take your characteristics.
Yes. And he was saying that, there's one hard, dark as anything, solid as anything. Yeah? And there's the another full of the light of God and the love of his emissary. And he energizes you and pushes you to do good and actions that take you and increase you. And there's another dark. Your choice.
How do you identify the charlatans? Because many people
I'll tell you, this is the thing that is so easy. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know this, that وَيَذْكُرُ اللَّهِ إِذَا رَآهُ. This is prophetic words of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet said 3 characteristics. Because Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radhiallahu anhu says, أَيُّ جُلَسَاءُنَا الْخَيْرِ. From our companions, who's the best? Yeah. The Prophet said, when you look at him, God is remembered. In his company, your amal increases. He increases your amal. And he increases you in knowledge of the akhirah. This is what Sidi Hamza was saying. Those are 3 characteristics. And I have a very simple benchmark for you. Yeah? Whose mother's still alive? Everyone's mothers. Yeah? Okay. So, all of you, when you go into the presence of your mother, how do you feel?
Kind of security.
Security. Safe. Ease. Yeah? Protected. Yeah? Nothing bad's going to happen. Yeah? Okay. When you find the right person, it'll be the same. Exactly the same. It'll be actually more. It won't be less than that. Because the thing is that, you'll find, the Sufis have this thing of qabd and bast. You go into the company of certain people, you feel, constricted. And certain people's company, your chest expands. Okay? So those are, again, 2 benchmarks. But the one that is very easy for people is because people who mothers are alive, it's easy. You can go home and feel that feeling.
So the 3 characteristics, the first one is,
when you see them, you remember Allah. You look at them, you say Allah. They remind you of God. When you go and sit in their company, they increase you in your amal. Amal al-khair. Good actions. And they increase you in ilm. Just by sitting with them. 3 things.
In ilm.
Ilm. But ilm not of this akhirah.
Say number 2 again.
Increase in actions and knowledge of the akhirah.
And this was in response to Ibn Abbas.
Ibn Abbas's hadith is authentic. He asked, which of our, companions, their company, which is the best. And that's, for me, that's a benchmark for choosing the right person, because the Rasul has laid it down for us. Sidi Mayara has brought this hadith from Hakim Tirmidhi from Anas. أفضلكم الذين إذا رأوا ذكر الله تعالى لرؤيتهم. The best of you are those when they are seen, God is remembered. Because because most of you have got this, so you can read the translation. I want to share with you something that a debate that happened. I've mentioned it before. Why do I need a sheikh? Yeah, because it's nothing to do with learning certain stuff. Because our situation changes day by day, and our state changes. If the doctor prescribes the medicine for you for a month, will that medication stay the same for the whole year? Question.
It depends on the doctor.
No, they change it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't depend on the doctor. The doctor, any doctor you go to, when you see him next, he will examine you again and give you another prescription.
Or he
increase it or lower it, according to how your treatment is going. Yeah. So now, can we say if someone is sick, can they self-prescribe? No. Yeah. That's the answer. Because if you accept that there is a spiritual illness, just as you only go to the physical doctor when you accept you're sick physically, then you submit to his or her treatment. It's the same with the spiritual doctor. You go to them only when you accept, I have something spiritually, there is an illness that I need to have treatment for. You go to them, they will change it. And the prescription will go up and down. The treatment will go up and down. And going back to the teacher must know. Yeah? Sidi Mayara, he quotes, Sidi Abu Madian and Ibn Ata'il Askandari, that, even if you were learning adab, literature, Arabic language, you would have to go to, a mu'addib, a man of letters. Not, the one who can't even read or write. You would have to go to the one who is, the best qualified in that science. And it's the same in the science of Tasawwuf. You go to someone, who you feel is the man for you. These claims that you hear Sufis making, they're just claims. We cannot verify them. And they can't verify them either. I'm speaking as someone, who belongs to a tariqah, has a sheikh. I've heard so much. You accept that this is a method to fulfill this obligation, I'm more worried about the method rather than the claims. Do you understand? Yeah? There's a job that needs to be done. I'm worried about the job rather than, the... Yeah? And that it's important that, I keep quoting Sidi Hamza radhiyallahu anhu, someone that, I was with for 30 years plus. He would always say that the end of the goal is God. The ayah, وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَاهَا وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَاهَا. That, your end is with your Lord. Because, the rest is just, what it is. You have to follow their method. He wrote a qasida in English. It says that, you fish where I fish. Yeah? Is what I do, is what I'm asking you to do. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I don't do. Yeah? The Prophet ﷺ prayed tahajjud, never missed it. It was an obligation upon him. On us, it's not an obligation. It's not even a sunnah upon us. Tahajjud. For us, it's not even a sunnah. But the Prophet never missed it. So it's really important that you find the right person. Yeah. Don't think that they don't exist. Yeah. They exist. When you're thirsty, what do?
Some water.
Yeah, you drink water. If you don't have it, what do?
You're going to seek it out.
You seek it out.
And how long do you have to walk? Was it an hour's walk? Before an
Yeah.
hour is done?
A mile.
A mile.
Mile. Each way. So tayammum is only permitted when you've given up seeking. Yeah? So you have to seek. You have to seek. And once you find the right one, you will know. You within yourself will know. His or her job, and I mean her, his or her job is to take you safely to the end of the journey. And the rest is history. As to, bringing your nafs, is there anything about Shaykh? We could spend a whole day talking about the requirements of the Shaykh, what the Shaykh should be. Is there any questions on that? No? Okay. Let's move on to muhasabatun nafs. Bringing yourself to account. Yeah? Who has ever done any business here? You've done business. You've done business. Okay. You've done business. What do you do at the end of the day?
Count the money?
No, apart from count the money.
Profit and loss.
You do profit and loss. Yeah? What is the golden rule in business? Pardon?
Profit better than more profit than
No, the golden rule is preserve the capital. Preserve the capital. You preserve the capital and you build on the capital. Yes, that's the rule. That's muhasabatun nafs. That is muhasabatun nafs. Your capital are your fara'id, your obligations. You preserve them. You protect them. Yeah? And you increase, your profit is your nafil. Yeah? And what you do is you bring yourself to account every day. What have I done? I've preserved my capital. I've made this profit. Have I made any loss? Yeah? If I did, how did that happen? You always go backwards. Do you understand what I mean, going backwards?
To review what's happened.
Yeah, you go to the trigger. Because you know with the loss, yeah, is what triggered the loss. So then what you do is you make sure that trigger never gets triggered again. Do you understand? Yeah? If it was bad company, if it was you being in a certain place, if it was, a certain person, you protect, you bring yourself to account every day. You don't need to sit down with pen and paper. It is a mental thing. But that is how you bring yourself daily to account. And that's how, Imam Ghazali and others have explained it. The triggers, there's an Arabic word called khawatir. Have you ever heard of those?
The thoughts.
Yes. Okay, what are they?
Rabbani.
Yeah.
Malakani.
Yeah.
Shaitan.
Yeah.
And Nafsani.
Nafsani. Okay. I only accept two of them. That's just me.
Okay.
Because you cut down to them, it's only two. They're either Rabbani or Shaitan and Nafsani. Because you see, you are the one that are either listening to the Malakuti or Shaitan. So the Nafsani is you.
They say Nafsani is worse than the Shaitan.
Yeah. No, but it's Nafsani. Because you see, it can't be worse. You're listening to it. Yeah. The Malakuti is Rabban, but all of them are Rabban. Yeah. But it's you knowing and recognizing that's what's triggering it. It's something that you never perfect. It's impossible to perfect. What you do is, these khawatir, people call them waswas as well. It's another word for it. Because their thoughts. And Sidi Hajj al-Abbas went to his Sheikh Sidi Abu Madian and said, these whispers are getting worse. And he looked at him and said, who told you to go away? They just go on a different level. It's like, a businessman, top of his mind is his business. So that's what's on top of his mind. So whatever you get occupied with, that's what your brain is always occupied with. Yeah? And what happens is that, whatever's on top of your mind, that's what's influencing you. And then, when suddenly something untoward happens, it's very easy to trace that back.
How would you recognize with the Rabbani and Nafsani?
If something gets you to do good, is it Nafsani or Shaitani? I mean, is it Nafsani or Rabbani? Huh?
Rabbani.
So you've already recognized it. So if it stops you from doing good, it's
Sometimes we think it's good, but actually it's not.
But that's just us. Because sometimes something is good for us. For diabetic people, bitter stuff is good. We love sweet stuff. But it's sometimes, certain things, it's like, I'll tell you my own experience. If I know everything in my, worship is going good, I know there's something wrong. I know there's something wrong. Because that's abnormal. Life is not supposed to go just like that.
Then what would you do, Shaykh?
I'd start checking. What am I doing wrong? And what I was taught was that, when things start going wrong, go back to the very basics. Yeah? Stinja. Begin with stinja. Am I, cleansing myself with personal hygiene? When I urinate, is it okay? Am I cleaning it properly? Am I washing myself properly? Are my clothes clean? Am I then wudu? Then prayer? Yeah? Then am I upsetting people? Then you start. Always basic stuff. Then start.
Self-audit, basically.
No, you do, yeah. But it's always, and what you'll find is once you start into this routine, you don't care what everyone else is doing. Because it's more important you sort yourself out. And you go quiet a lot as well. Inshallah. Does it make...
Yeah.
Okay. But it's... you need to get into practice. And it does come. Okay. This preserving, what I said of the capital. Do you remember earlier on today I said that, when you make your intention, make it to come close to God. Yeah? This is something that, our fuqaha who are Sufis, they've influenced our fiqh. Yeah? And where do they get it from? Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا تَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِالشَّيْءٍ إِلَى أَحَبَّ مِمَّا افترضت عليه. That there is when a slave of mine comes closer to me, by nothing more beloved to me than what I have made obligatory upon him. It's a hadith Qudsi. But the word is taqarrub. He approaches me. So because God is saying that we approach him with the fard, so we make the intention that we want to approach him with the fard. Yeah? The rest of the hadith is very famous, that a slave of mine continues to approach me with his nawafil until I love him. Yeah? Until I love him. When I love him, I become his hearing with which he hears with, his sight with which he sees with, his hands with which he strikes with, his feet with which he walks with. And if he asks me, I give it to him. And if he seeks protection from me, I give him protection. Yeah? So how do we get to this? Shaykh, dhikr. Yeah? So Sidi Mayara says, أما إكثار من الذكر مطلوب أيضا. Just as getting a sheikh is something desired and sought, doing a lot of dhikr is also sought. And Imam Malik radhiyallahu anhu transmits, this narration from Mu'adh bin Jabal, we were talking before, that there is nothing from the actions of man that will save him from the wrath of God than from, the dhikr of Allah. That, from our actions, there's nothing that will save us from the wrath of God except the dhikr of Allah. And Sheikh Jazuli, not the author of the Dalail Khairat, this is a commentator on the Risala. So he says that from man, when he does a lot from the dhikr of Allah, it renews his humility. Yeah? It renews his humility and strengthens his iman, and he increases in certainty. He is distant from heedlessness from his heart, and he is close to taqwa, and distant from sin. And he referenced that to the famous hadith from Sahih Muslim, the similitude of one who remembers his sustainer to the one who does not remember him is the similitude of the one living and the one dead. And Sidi Mayara says, what's meant by this, he says, Allah knows best. Yeah? But he says that, what's sought from the dhakir, that he remembers God with presence in his heart, and he orients his entirety to Allah, not just moving his tongue. You orient yourself to God. You don't just move your tongue. And you seek help from all of this, from bringing yourself to account, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What time is Maghrib?
About 8 past. 8 past?
Yeah.
8 past.
They say 10 past.
10 past, okay. But okay.
Oh, here says 11.
Okay, 11 past. But okay. Now, that was, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our jurists, leaving the Sufis aside, from if you read Imam Sanusi, in his Aqidah, minor and his middle, and Qutb Dardir in his Kharita, his book, Aqidah book, and in his Aqrab al-Masalik, they all talk about the dhikr of La ilaha illallah more than others. Now, for the Qutb Dardir, Sheikh Dardir, he says, at the end of the book, he says that, La ilaha illallah should become like the blood in your veins. And just as the blood feeds your flesh, the dhikr should become part and parcel of your body, and supporting and nourishing your heart. Because Imam Junaid, he's on record, he says that when you begin the path, you begin with La ilaha illallah, and when you end the path is with La ilaha illallah. And it's just that it's the meaning that's important, because you're negating everything other than God, and you recognize that. One is that you just keep repeating it, but then when the meaning dawns on you, that's when you hit the mark. Yeah. So there's we've done the muhasabatun nafs, we've done the dhikr. There's something called mujahidatun nafs, where you struggle with your nafs. You kill it. When you're fighting against yourself, you kill it. How do you kill it? By rejecting what it wants, its desires. How that happens is you leave what it commands you to. Because what it wants you to leave what Allah is commanding and do the acts which are prohibited. Now, this is, the opposite of what God wants from us. And this is what, Sidi Mayara calls Jihadul Akbar, the greater jihad. Now, when this is, solely for the sake of Allah, solely for Him and Him alone, in obedience to His commands and His prohibitions, not for pride or for showing off, then and only then it becomes for Allah and Allah alone. The next is something which is called tahalli. Have you ever come across this word? Tahalli is, to bedeck yourself, bejewel yourself with the maqamat of certainty, which the stages of certainty. And with the characteristics of fear and hope. This usually, hope and fear, the usual understanding is that, you hope to go to the garden and you fear going to the fire. It's good. But when everything becomes for God, when you're fighting your very soul, your very being, on your tongue is the name of God, mind, you're occupied by God. What has the fire and garden got to do with it? Yeah. So I don't think if I share with you my own thoughts on it, is you fear losing God. That's the fear. You fear losing God. Yeah? And your hope is that He stays. Or whichever way you want to put it. Yeah? You know, there's a Qasida of Sidi Hamza. He says, if all of creation leaves me, I cannot. But if you leave, so bedeck yourself with those stages of khawf and fear and of asceticism, zuhud in this world. This zuhud, I don't know how relevant it is with us. There's this conversation, there was this tabi called Ali ibn Dinar, or Ibn Dirar, I think his name is, and he was known as an ascetic. And they said, look, how did you become ascetic, a Zahid? And he laughed at them. He said, why do you call me a Zahid? I said, aren't you? He said, you need to have something to let go. I never had anything that I could give away to become a Zahid. And then he pointed to, because he was in the same time as Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he says, now he's a Zahid. He said he was a prince who never wore the same set of clothes twice. Yeah. He says, look at him now. He's trying to, like Sayyidina Umar ibn Sayyidina Umar, 2 sets of clothes. So that's a Zahid. So people who talk about doing without, you need to have something in the first place. Yeah. If you don't have it, what kind of Zahid is that? Oh, I don't do this and I don't do that. But did you have it in the first place? Yeah. So, giving preference to the akhirah, and you don't take from the dunya except what is necessary, and for your needs, and you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all your matters, and you are pleased with what Allah has given you, and you're happy with what He has destined for you from the good and the bad, and in love of Allah and for the love of His Rasul, because that is the source of the love of God. This thing that people say, I love Allah, but you can't have the love of God without the love of the Rasul. Yeah? And also loving the scholars who are pious, the muttaqeen, because something that is beloved, something that is beloved to the beloved is beloved. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emerges from the acceptance of God, because everything that is ما يصدر له كما تقدم, what's already preceded, because the love is when love is the inheritance of pleasure, of acceptance, love is the inheritance of acceptance.
Is this Mayara said that?
Yeah. In the actions of, the beloved.
So, if we are accepted, we inherit to be loved?
No, if we are accepted...
If we accept what's commanded of us...
No, it's his acceptance. His acceptance is...
bequeaths us love.
Is, yes. I think it's Maghrib.
Yeah.
You got water? Shall we pray Maghrib?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,